So what are the things that educators can do to make learning and living through COVID-19 easier for you? And we can talk through the actions that they can take, maybe things that they can change, and maybe things that you want them to keep the same. So I'll pass this one off to you first, Ariel.
I would definitely say the asynchronous was a lot better for me because when I came home, I had more responsibilities. I had to pay for more things, help out. So like working a full-time job and also making sure I could attend my 8 a.m. class and my 4 p.m. class because nursing had me like all over the place between labs and then just a few of my gen eds. I think if it weren't as much like you need this in right now or I need you to get online office hours right now kind of thing was really difficult for me to move my schedule around to what worked better for other people. And also, I think you said something earlier about how everything's due like Friday night at midnight. That was really difficult for me because I had to be like, I had to write it all down. I had to see like which class needed what done. And it's just harder when you're not hearing it in person from a professor telling you like, you have this, and like, it's very scrambled because I guess it was last second. So I guess it'll be working in progress. I think listening to the students more will probably help.
Yeah, that's helpful to know. Vincent, Kiana, do you have any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I can chime in and kind of expand on what Ariel said. I think for me, the hardest part, because it switched to being all online, was that not only would you have like bigger assignments, like a small paper or something like that, but you'd also have weekly discussions. And for some of them, I would have to do like 2 or 3 or 4 steps or whatever. So it ended up becoming so much. And then you had the responsibilities like, oh, taking my sister, helping out mom and dad, or cooking or getting groceries and things like that. And so I feel like it added a lot more stress because normally in the classroom, you can just have your class participate and then you go and do your homework after. But now it was like 5 or 6 things that you'd have to do. And then towards the end of the semester, you had finals and stuff like that as well. And doing that for 5 or 6 classes, that just really can like stress you out. And it stressed me out a little bit too, because I'd never done online before.
Sure, sure. Kiana, do you have anything to add before we move to the next question?
Yeah, I mean, like I basically agree with all of that. I would just, for our professors, like in anything they'd like to change or like to make it easier for us, I mean, I just say that, to take more of our opinions like into consideration and like listen to what we have to say and like, hey, maybe this isn't like so possible for me, like anything that we can work out. Just taking into more consideration what the students have to say and how their lives are looking right now.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And that actually works really well with some of the questions we're having coming in with the next question we have here, which is the preference for the type of lecture under COVID. We've talked a little bit in the presentation how students are split on whether or not they prefer live lectures, recorded lectures, maybe a flipped classroom model where lectures are recorded and watched independently and class time is for practicing and learning the material. I'll pass it to you first, Vincent, on your opinion on what you prefer under these scenarios.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So I think for me, my ideal type of thing and like or preference is more the live lecture, because at least in that instance, I'm seeing other people's faces and hearing their questions if they haven't, and be like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that. Or like seeing the professor and then having him or her like explain different things in multiple ways. If like me or like someone else in like the chat's like, I don't really understand what's going on, like we'll shoot it to whoever's talking. So if they like add on or if they are more of a talker than others, like, hey, like this was brought up by another classmate and yada yada yada, so we can get it explained better. I feel like if it's just recorded, then that's another thing on top of all your other assignments and duties that you have to do. So I prefer the live lectures.
Got it, got it. What else do other people think?
Do you want this one or?
I was gonna say I liked some of my professors actually did it to where you could go live, but they also recorded it so you could go back and watch it. And I personally prefer to like not go live, but be able to watch it on my own time, listen to what other people had asked, and then log into office hours and be able to ask questions about it later. Just I could rewatch it, which was really helpful rather than like trying to take notes really quickly.
Gotcha. Kiana, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it really, like in my own personal situation, I saw that it really depended on the type of teacher that it was, and like their own personal teaching style that made me decide, because I don't think I'm a bit like torn, because you know, in some cases I would prefer live lectures, and then in other cases, you know, like thinking about the other students that are there with me, you know, some of them might be older and like they have kids, and you know, like Ariel full-time jobs and things like that. So in consideration for them, I would prefer a recorded lecture, but I think it would also have to depend on like my professors and like seeing how they worked with these specific types of lectures, and like how it benefited me, that I would, you know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We saw in our research, all of your positions were represented there. Students are really split on whether or not they prefer recorded lectures or in person, not in person, but live lectures. And this is mainly because of time zone differences. So it might be different in regional, you know, if the majority of your students are local to you and your school, then it's likely that potentially they would have more availability for a live lecture, but you also have to take into account their full-time job situation, right? They just might have to work more under these scenarios or take care of more people at home. And so I think polling the classes that you have is a really, really useful tool. And again, for some of the folks who just joined in here now, we will be giving access to our SurveyMonkey. So if you'd like to throw that out to your classes, you can replicate our study and see how yours compares to the study that we did. So the next question that we have here is, did your assigned tasks increase or decrease under COVID remote learning? And how did you feel about what ended up happening? Ariel, I'll pass that to you first.
I definitely think my assignments ended up increasing between, like, I don't have my labs anymore. So they were like, well, here, take all this work, get this done, because you can't sit down and for 3 hours at a time and do a lab. And then between that and my clinicals got canceled. So a lot of my nursing professors were like, here, do these online modules that you weren't going to have to do. And I'd end up redoing the same modules for different classes. So I understand they were trying to compensate to make sure we were understanding, but I think we would have been able to do that in a different way, would have been more beneficial to my learning rather than droning on and on about the same modules.
Got it. That's helpful to know. What do other people think?
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry. Kiana, you can take it.
Great.
Kiana, I'll have you go first and then we'll have Vincent go next.
Yeah, so I would definitely agree. Like the workload has definitely increased. You know, a lot of professors are thinking, oh, okay, you're home all day now. So you can do all of this work. Okay, you'll have this one assignment that takes 3 hours to complete, and you'll have one of these every single day of the week. And you know, that's kind of just not how it works. You know, there's a lot of emotional and like psychological aspects that we are forgetting about, you know, suddenly making such a big transition. And so, you know, piling more work on top of that would impede our progress more so than help us.
That's helpful. Vincent.
Yeah, definitely with what Ariel and Kiana said. I think it was an increase in assignments because of what I mentioned earlier. You lost the participation, and so you had to make up for that in some way. So you'd have that, and some of them it was like you had to write a reply to the main question, then you had to answer or ask 2 questions to other students, then do another 2 mini assignments on top of all that. And so it ended up being, at least for me, a lot of it ended up being the same as doing a 3-hour project, because you just had so much stuff, and for doing that for multiple classes, it just became like a huge thing. And then at the end, there'd be a lot more grading for the teachers as well. So, and I mean, a lot of them have families and stuff like that too. So I think definitely like scaling it back would probably help make it easier for students and for the faculty.
Those are all really good points. Let's see here. So the next question is, what is your dream option for how school would work under COVID-19? We talked a little bit about this during our presentation. We polled 831 students and they all told us their dream creative idea of how they could practically and reasonably work under COVID-19 for school. I want to hear your thoughts. So how would it work? What would it look and sound like? What would logistically be the way that it functions for your schooling? And I want you to get creative here. So Kiana, I'll throw this one to you first.
Yeah. I mean, mean, if we're talking about, like health wise and making sure that I can actually live through my college experiences, I would definitely choose, remote learning. But if I could, like if I'm focusing more on, you know, better work and and the quality of work that I'm putting out, I would choose in person, but with a lot of commitments and adherence to guidelines and safety measures, because there's a lot of people that really cannot protect themselves in these situations. And I really feel like we need to stop looking at this as such of such of like a individualistic type of situation, and kind of just look at the bigger picture and like see that, okay, we all need to just get it together and keep everything moving, you know. And I feel like that would be my dream school of sorts, under the entire COVID situation. Discounted tuition prices would be nice too.
Yeah, yeah, that's helpful to know. Who else has thoughts here?
I can go.
Okay.
Okay, you first, Vincent.
Sorry. Okay. So mine, I'd say creative might be a loose term. More just like in general. So and people might laugh, but I'm a Ravenclaw. So I love learning. Like anything, if it's like in my degree and in my minors, I'm always just like, oh my God, that's so crazy. And then I'm like calling my family or whatever, like, just shut up, Vincent. We don't care. And I'm like, guys, I just love it so much. So for me, don't know how practical this would be, but I would literally just like school to just be like just sitting in a class for like an hour and a half to 2 hours and just listening, and that's it. Just like learning different materials, different things, and just being fascinated by the world. And then that's it. Then you leave, done. That's school. Practically, probably not going to happen, but because you have to have like homework and tests and stuff like that. But I definitely agree with Kiana and the thing of realistically probably just doing remote learning for now and being safe and stuff like that. But my ideal is just to sit and just learn about random things forever.
You sound like a pretty fun student to have in class, Vincent. That's awesome. Ariel, what are your thoughts?
Realistically, well, I go back to campus this coming Monday, so I will be on campus and they're doing like hybrid classes, but I would honestly just prefer to be living on campus but still have like my online learning. Like I don't want to be home anymore. I want to have like the options of being on campus, at least being able to like be in a somewhat of a school setting. If I could get to the library once a week or go to like in-person office hours or on just anything that's relates to school that's not being home.
Yeah, that makes sense. Does anyone else have any other thoughts about the living on campus yet also having remote learning during that time? Anyone else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, my school is setting up something like that, where we're going to have hybrid classes. So about half of the class would be in person, wearing masks, socially distanced, and then the other half would be at home, logging in, virtually and everything like that. And then we would switch every time the classes happen. So we are doing something like that, which I'm really thankful for. So we're making that happen.
Got it. Vincent, are you going to be remote? Is that what's happening for you?
No. So my university, Webster, is actually pretty small. We're about 3,000 undergraduate.
Okay.
So we're going back in person, and our normal sizes cap at 25. So they just reduced that to 12. So you have to wear masks and things like that and socially distance, but we're going to still be in class and things like that. And then obviously classes in college aren't always, Monday through Friday. So it'll be like 2 or 3 days a week or whatever. And then the other times you won't have it. So thankfully we'll be on campus. They made all of our dorms just singles. So you're not sharing it with another person. So they're still taking the precautions, but it's nice because, I mean, that's the whole point, at least of college, is like you're going there, you're living, you're hanging out with people. Obviously there's more protections in place now, but I mean, I miss hanging out and doing stuff with my friends just because that's part of the college experience, or going to office hours like Ariel said and things like that.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's see our next question here. So we've talked about a lot of thoughts on how can and should educators modify their course requirements to adapt to COVID realities? And we've seen from our presentation, there's so many different ideas, everything from cheaper packets or resources because money has decreased in the majority of folks' cases to be able to purchase those things, to maybe requiring asynchronous but not synchronous classes, or whatever types of adaptations you feel like are appropriate for your specific case. I'd like to hear those specific course requirements that you would hope for. I'll pass that to you first, Ariel.
I definitely would like to see more things that I can turn in that are like my individual work, because like the discussion boards were particularly difficult for me because I would be at work 8 hours a day and then have to come home and log back into it after I'd already answered, just so I could answer other people's to make sure I met the requirements for participation, etc. From there, I just think having different exams, exams at the end of last semester were really difficult for me because a lot of my professors were like, I know how to use Google Forms, let me just throw some questions on here and the students can figure it out, kind of thing. And that was difficult for me because a lot of my professors didn't adapt to the online very quickly, which was completely understandable because we were all adapting. But it's just a matter of things that are going to be best for the type of class, because a lot of mine are sciencey classes. I like to see things, hold things, like understand what's going on rather than just seeing paper PDFs, forms.
Got it. Who else has thoughts on this question here? Kiana or Vincent?
Yeah, I'll add definitely less assignments and more kind of like what Ariel said. Like one of the classes that I had this semester was studio acting. So it was really difficult. I mean, you could still like, we FaceTimed for like scenes and stuff like that. But like the whole point, at least with acting, is like you're going off of what your partner is giving you and you're reacting to that in a genuine way. And that's what makes it acting. And having just like technology, it kind of just blocked and you couldn't see anything else but like their face. So that was difficult. But I mean, even some of the textbooks, because I feel like this semester, definitely, like I barely, if even, use my textbooks at all. And some of them, like ones that I've looked at for this semester, one of them's like $150 to buy. I'm like, normally I don't have that money, let alone during this whole pandemic, because like unfortunately parents and stuff like that have lost their jobs and are trying to find stuff. So I feel like you could definitely, because a lot of them have taught the class over and over again, or they know someone who has, so they could get whatever the new textbook is and then just like do copies of chapters if they're not going to use the whole book, and just make it easier that way. Got it.
Thanks, Vincent. Kiana, do you have any thoughts here?
No, I kind of just, had a similar situation as Vincent did. I have to do vocal lessons as one of my requirements, and it was very difficult trying to figure out, what exactly my teacher would want, because like he said, when you're acting, you're going off based off what your partner is giving you. And when I'm in my lessons, I'm going based off of what my professor is giving me, what my instructor is giving me, what she's, leading me to do. So it's definitely takes some adjustment, but.
Yeah. We have a really interesting question here from Jenny, who says, I'm a big proponent of collaborative assignments, and I feel like it's important to continue building student community through group work. She mentioned she was surprised that the data presented earlier that students didn't prefer group work, and they felt it was unfair under COVID-19. We did see that through our survey, and it was pretty significant that students felt that it was unfair because of time zone differences and the challenges of working remotely across jobs, time zones, and all the other scenarios that happen under COVID-19. So I'd love to pass that to you because I think it's relevant right now. Does anyone have any thoughts about group assignments and the fairness or unfairness of them? Ariel, it looks like you have a thought here.
A lot of my nursing classes wanted to make it easier on us, they wanted to do collaborative exams. And so we would have to get together on Google Meet, but we'd have to find a time that would work for us. And then half the time one of our internet wouldn't be working. And so we'd have to call in with our phone. And it's just, I find it difficult to be able to, it's not that it's hard to work with people, because if we were in person, it'd be a lot easier. We'd have set schedules while we're at school. But while we're at home, it's hard to imagine like what each other are going through and how we have like the different responsibilities. And it's just, and then talking, like even on here, it's difficult to know who wants to talk when. So when we're all on like Google Meet, we're trying to figure out what's going on and we can't hear each other. It's breaking out. Like it's just been difficult from from the past experience of the semester.
Got it. That's helpful, Ariel. Anyone else have thoughts on group? Vincent, it looks like you have a thought.
Yeah, I'm kind of tying off of what Ariel had said. Not only like more school, you have a schedule, even like with commuters, they know like, okay, here's when I'm at school or here's when I can come to school or whatever. But being at home, there's a lot of unexpected things. Like I have 3 younger siblings. So one of the nights, like the next day I was going to work with my partner for the studio acting class. And then my sister ended up needing help with something. And I stayed up till like 2 or 3 in the morning helping her. And that wasn't something that was like, oh yeah, I know I'm going to do this at this time. So it became more of a thing where we like had to like keep changing it, and then we finally ended up getting it, but it's just more chaotic because more things can spontaneously happen when you're at home and with the family than when you have like your set schedule at school.
Sure. Kiana, do you have a preference on group projects at all?
I really didn't get a lot of group projects, just a few, and those weren't enjoyable at all. I had similar experiences, it's really hard to be able to work on something together when so many people have so many different things happening in their lives, or they're running on, different clocks. So it's like really hard if you're working on something that depends on all of you. Like your grade depends on how much work each of you are putting in. And if someone can't make a deadline, that just makes the whole thing fall apart. So I didn't have many, but I'm not a fan of it in this situation.
Got it. Yeah, that does match what we heard from our quantitative survey, that it is very challenging for students under COVID-19 to work together as a group across state lines and different clocks and different just chaotic experiences at home. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so the next question we have is, what tools do you use to learn or study together with your peers during COVID-19? Vincent, I'll pass this one to you first.
Yeah, so I obviously use Zoom a lot. And then a few of the people, if they had iPhones, they preferred just to do it over FaceTime since it wasn't like a huge class. And like, oh, I'm so done with Zoom. So for some of them, that was more their thing. Other people, they didn't. So it's like, yeah, let's just do Zoom. So those are really the only 2 that I used. I know a few of my other friends and siblings had used Teams, and they really like that method. I didn't really use that. That wasn't what my professors were using. We also had one at Webster called WebEx.
Okay.
So we use that as well for some things to meet outside of just because they're like, oh yeah, this is what we know it is, or what we use. But those were like the 2 and kind of 3 if you want, that we used for stuff and projects.
Sure. What other tools did other people use to connect with peers, study together, form study groups, or anything else? Anyone else have thoughts?
Go ahead, Kiana.
Kiana, you go.
Well, a few of the other tools that I use, were GroupMe. That's, sorry, but we use GroupMe, Google Calendar Meet, so we can, compare calendars, compare schedules, and like see, okay, like we can meet up at this time and we can do this, and we'll figure out exactly what we're working on, what is happening at each time, and we just set up and like delegate our time using those different tools and things like that to make it super easy for all of us.
Got it. What about you, Ariel?
We usually used the Google Meet and calendar, like Kiana said, and then a lot of the nursing majors, we actually like would create Google Docs and we'd copy and paste our notes and we'd like refine all of our notes. We had exactly what we needed, which seemed to help a lot because we could see who was on there and like write little notes to each other.
Got it. That's helpful. All right, so the next question we have is, what are your professors getting right? What are they doing that's been just really great during this pandemic scenario? And this could be any professor that you've had, while you are transitioning from the last semester as things got wild, or things that are upcoming for this upcoming semester here. I'm going to pass this one to you, Kiana, first.
Right. So, my professors have been, I'm going to gush, my professors have been doing a wonderful job. I would like to put into perspective that I do go to a smaller private university, so max for all students would be about like 12,000, a little bit less than that. And once we get down into, my major slash department, it's roughly about like less than 200 of us. So it's very easy for my professor to, email me and be like, hey, I remember we were talking about such and such like back then. Like what's the status update on that? Or maybe a professor can like email the class and be like, hey, I understand that right now it has been a super rough time and I feel like we all just need some support and we just need to come together and be a community. So, my professors are able to do that. And like, I have one professor that, often sends us little articles or videos or like webinars, things that we can join and kind of take our mind off of what's happening, but they always stay within the vein of what we're studying and what we're doing, so that it's kind of a reminder that this is what you're working towards and this is what you're putting your heart and soul into, so don't let all of this take away from what you're going to be doing in the future. So I'd say my professors are doing pretty good.
That's awesome, Kiana. Anybody else have thoughts on this one?
Yeah, like Kiana, I also go to a small private university. So there was a lot of things, even before class would start, like my studio acting professor would always be like, okay, so how are you doing? Like, be honest, what's going on in your life? What's good, what's bad, that kind of thing. Or sometimes like a one-word check-in to see, how we're doing. And then I definitely want to give a shout out to one of my professors. He was absolutely amazing. He gave us, because we're a small university, he gave us his number and he's like, yeah, I rarely check my email, my school one anyway. So he's like, just go ahead and just like text me with any of your questions. So he would always reply back. And even sometimes if I'd send him like 2 or 3 questions, he would like call me and be like, hey, like, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. Then he'd answer all the questions. And then he would always end with, be safe and be healthy and things like that. And so it just was a nice, genuine connection. And it wasn't like, oh, he's a teacher, he's just like above me, blah, 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 blah. But he was more like, hey, like, how are you doing? Answering the questions. And so it was really nice and unique as well. I'm like, wow, I haven't had this with a professor before. So it was a really great experience. And I don't know if I would have had that without this. So I'm grateful for that opportunity and that he was such a great professor.
That's great to hear, Vincent. Yeah, we had a lot of other people in the survey mention in our open-ended forms that they noticed that they actually had a stronger relationship with their educator under COVID-19 than they would have if they would have just been in person in a large classroom, like a traditional year. It's interesting to sometimes think of the positives, a silver lining, for instance. So that's good to hear. Ariel, what do you think here?
I actually had a really similar experience. A lot of my professors were like, hey, I don't check my emails. Go ahead and just text me anything you need. If you're having issues, if you just need to kind of vent, go ahead and just text me. So that ended up helping a whole lot. And then a lot of my the nursing professors, if they pay really close attention to like the times you turn stuff in. So if they notice like you're turning the same thing in, like you're turning everything in Friday, like a minute before midnight, they're gonna email you and be like, hey, are you doing okay? Do you need some more time? How are things at home? Like personally checking in with you, like rather than just like, why is this so late, or why did you rush through it, or something like that. They actually genuinely cared.
Wow, that's great to hear. We have a few more questions here, and then we're going to get to the questions from the audience. So we saw in a study presented earlier in the session that some students felt some types of assessments, the way that they were graded, it felt personally unfair because of COVID-19. And we want to know, what are the types of assessments or getting a grade that feel most fair to you? And it could be specific to your major. You might say, as a performing arts major or as a bio major, this is how it feels for me. We'd love to hear your unique perspective there. I would love to pass this off to maybe Kiana first, if you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, no problem. So exams were much more difficult, because my school has their own little kind of website thing where teachers can, make quizzes and tests and things like that on there. And that's often what a lot of my professors use to create like the midterms and final exams. And like as a music major, it was really kind of difficult to be able to like do some certain things, like especially when you get into more of the theory side of things. Like it's hard to like do the work and be able to input everything correctly. So I feel like those situations were a little bit unfair, but at the same time, again, like Ariel mentioned, earlier, that, everyone was just trying to get adjusted to this, and maybe what they put out was the best that they could have done. So
It's good to know. Ariel or Vincent, do you have any thoughts about what types of assessment methods for your majors and the work that you're doing feel fair or unfair during this time?
I think for me, mine actually kind of felt fair because it didn't really change
Mm.
that much outside of, I mean, that stuff was online. But for my major, a lot of my stuff ends up either being a paper or a presentation. So it was just weird to do like a presentation, you recorded it. But outside of that, at least for me, it kind of felt fair because it was the same thing as I had been used to before. So, I mean, I'm grateful for that. And I know there's other people it was more of a struggle and unfair, but I don't know. That was my experience this time around.
Good to know. What do you think, Ariel? Do you have any thoughts on this one?
See, I am kind of split between the two. A lot of mine did stay the same, but then some of my other classes, some professors tried to switch things up to make it easier on us, I think. And then it was actually really hard to transition to something different. Like I think I mentioned earlier, the Google Forms was just very difficult for me. But then some of my professors used like, they would share a Google Doc and we'd all make a copy, do our answers, and then like send it in or share it. And they could see the time, and that ended up working really well. So I think it's just a matter of like figuring out what works.
Yeah, good to know. Maybe this requires some sort of research from the professor's end. And again, just to highlight in case you missed this, our study, you can replicate it. We're giving out all of that. It's going to be completely open. So if you'd like to replicate this survey with your students to get a sense for how they feel, you're welcome to do so. Now it's time to open up for some questions. So I'm going to share my screen just to prepare here. Okay. And we're going to be going through some of the questions that we have over here from our audience. So let's get started on that here. The first question that we have from the audience is, do you think instructors are providing sufficient feedback during online teaching? So sufficient feedback during online teaching. For our student panelists, what do you think? Are you getting sufficient feedback during your online teaching experience with your professors? Ariel, it looks like you might have a thought here. Do you want to say something?
I was just thinking about an experience I had with one of my professors. I actually had asked for feedback and I was like, well, what can I do better, like with what you're doing, like what seems to be working for other students, because I couldn't get anything to work. From there I was kind of told like, well, some students are doing better because online format's better for them. Sorry, you did better in class experiences. So I was just kind of thinking about that whole thing, and I'm just like, online just wasn't working.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kiana or Vincent, did you ever get any sufficient feedback during online teaching? Maybe a professor did it really well or something like that? If you don't have a thought, you also don't need to say anything. I can move on to another question.
Yeah, I think outside of just assignments, there wasn't really a whole lot of feedback because I think it was such a difficult and weird time for everyone. I feel like they kind of pulled back so people didn't feel like personally attacked. So I think it was more of like a comfort and being a consoler than it was like, let's give feedback. I was like, okay, obviously for assignments because you have to. But outside of that, it was kind of, unless the person asked, it was kind of just like, let's just hit the brakes a little bit.
Interesting, Vincent. Wow, I hadn't even thought about that people are feeling more sensitive and overwhelmed, and maybe they just cannot take the feedback when everything was happening with COVID and you had to move out in like one 24-hour period from your college campus. Kiana, do you have any thoughts here before I move on to the next question? Okay, Kiana, this next one's actually for you. Let's make sure that I can find it so I can get the exact thing. Okay, so R. Roberts asks, Kiana, teaching performance arts right now has some specific challenges, things like music, dance, theater. Vincent, you might be able to speak to this too, because I think you're doing theater. As a music ed student, are you learning online strategies in your courses as a student that seem useful? Are there any helpful hints for an educator who might be teaching similar classes that you're taking right now? Kiana, what do you think?
So, yeah, as I said, I have a professor that often sends us like different articles and things like that. And more of more recently, they've been more geared towards how, you know, in the future, if something like this were to ever happen again, how we would be able to, you know, do that and kind of make that a reality. Um, in strategies, um, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
No problem. Any helpful hints for a teacher or a professor who's looking to teach some music education? Anything that you felt worked really well for that?
Well, I mean, definitely just keeping in constant contact with your students and like hopefully, you know, um being able to like really get from them like if they're really understanding things. Like I'm not exactly sure what specific subject that they are teaching, but for instance with music theory, you know, that is definitely a subject that you want to make sure that you are constantly keeping up with your students, because maybe in person things can be interpreted a little differently. And so, you know, that would just be the main thing I would have to say. You know, constantly keeping up with your students and like constantly reminding them like, hey, I'm here, you can talk to me, let me know what's going on, and just
Yeah, that's helpful. Vincent, do you have any perspective on this in terms of the theater that you were doing? Are there any tips and tricks for someone who's teaching that?
Yeah, so mine was only a class, so I can't speak to like an entire like major or whatever, things like that. But I think the best, I mean, I think my professor did the best he could with what he had. So we ended up doing scene work because um, that's like a big thing in theater, and that also gets you engaged with other students. So I like that because then I was still able to like talk with people before, after, and we were able to be like, hey, you know, because she was very she had a little bit more broken English and she was an international student. So she was really trying to like do her best and be like, hey, like, what can I do better on and things like that. So I really like that aspect in like being able to do scene work. And then we also ended up doing a monologue. We changed a song into a monologue. So I think it's more of to do as like much camera time or like live things as you can, because I mean it's hard to just do like strictly online and then do theater because there's so much like facial work and hands and movement and things like that that are involved. So I think with what he did do, I think it was great. So yeah, again, just do as much like face work and stuff like that online live as you can.
Got it. Thanks, Vincent. We have another question here from Christy Jackson. Christy says, I'd be interested in knowing whether students feel like synchronous meetings are realistic. So meeting at the same time with all of the students from the class. In other words, if I ask my students to meet on Zoom at a regular class time, is that realistic? I want you to speak from your specific situation. Ariel, I know I can maybe start with you because you have some thoughts here. What do you think about this? Is it realistic to make those expectations during this time?
For me personally, it can be done if that's what's asked of me, but a lot of my classes are like 8 a.m.s every single day, and I often work like 2 p.m. to like 2 a.m., so I don't get a lot of sleep when I have 8 a.m. classes. But that's just me. It just really depends on like when the class would be, I guess, what time.
Would you, before COVID-19, did you work until 2 in the morning, or is that a COVID-19 specific
It's
situation?
a COVID-19 specific thing.
I see, I see. That's helpful to know. Anyone else have thoughts about requiring synchronous communication?
I mean, I would kind of agree what Ariel said. It depends on the time. Mine was usually in the evening. So it was a little bit died down because one of the parents was home so they could like help out and things like that. But I think it should be a thing like realistically, if a handful of people or whatever can't make it, then at least recording it so they're still able to see it on their own time, like if they have a break at work or something like that. Just because it can be so difficult with people working either long hours or hours during when they would have for class. Because some of the jobs like work, it's like 11 to like 6 or something like that, or in the morning to like early afternoon. So like you get home and you're exhausted and you're trying to do other stuff for family. And so you might not just have that time. So having at least that other option would allow the student to still be able to learn and catch up on what they didn't see in person.
Got it, got it. Kiana, do you have any thoughts here before I move on?
basically everyone had it covered. Also, in my personal situation, I didn't necessarily have to do a lot of, in-person like live meetings. I had one class that I really, well, more than one, but the main one, it was much later in the evening, so I really didn't have to worry about that. So I was able.
So I muted you, Kiana. I think your mic might be squeaking or something like that. I'm not sure if that's you or if it's on my end, but I just muted you real quick. Did anybody else hear that, or do you want me to keep it on? Okay, you heard it. Okay, great. So I'll have you mute for right now. Thanks. Okay, so let's see here. It looks like we talked about if percentages of the class can't meet for a live class, what do you feel like is an equitable way to proceed? We kind of covered that a little bit, like if you can't meet in class, then, and you're not able to be there, then maybe recording the live lecture so people can watch later would be equitable. It sounded like that's kind of what you're thinking. Are there any other thoughts from folks on what would be an alternative solution other than recording live? If not, we can move on to the next question. Yeah, it sounds like we covered that one. Okay, so I'll cross that one off. Thank you, Priya, for asking that one. All right, so let's see. Okay, Priya has another interesting question here. Have you noticed any changes in your typical nature, like you as a person under COVID-19? Are you maybe more assertive? Have you changed in any way? Has anything changed about you? Maybe Ariel, I'll pass this one to you first.
I don't really see anything. I've always felt like I've been a driven person. It's just I've been able to take more on my plate, I guess. I don't know if I've been able to juggle things a little bit better. I've always been organized, but now or like when we were doing school, I'd have like classes all morning. I'd go to work at 2, I get back at like 2 in the morning, and then I'd sleep for a little bit and then just do it over and over again. But from there, I also took the opportunity I joined a couple of clubs while we were all online, and that helped. It did add more to my plate, but it kind of de-stressed me a little bit because I had like people to talk to about non-school related stuff.
Yeah, we heard that during our survey too, is that keeping those clubs, even if you're not kind of doing the typical club thing, like even if it's a rowing club and you're not rowing, you still have a meeting and you talk. So that's good to know. That's been helpful for you too. Vincent, I'll pass it to you next. And then Kiana, maybe if you want to put your headphones in, that could help with the squeak, and then I'll pass to you. Vincent, what are your thoughts here?
Yes. So I think I changed for the worse. Because for me, like schedules are very, very helpful. I'm like on time, like, okay, I know I gotta be at this place, so I'm like in the zone or whatever. But with the whole thing where it'd be like, okay, you have class at like 5 to 7 or something like that, and then sometimes work or like homework would be all day, sometimes it wouldn't. So I felt I was more thrown off. And again, with like the online, I felt like I just wasn't as invested and did as much as I normally do because I'm like, oh, it's online, it's more of a relaxed setting. So I felt like I wasn't at like 110% like I normally am when I'm in school and like super focused. So in that aspect of it, it kind of bummed me out because like I said earlier, I love learning. So for me, and again, it was like the more distractions and things like that. So I was less focused on like being pulled away as like, okay, I just need to like meet the like minimum requirements. And I just felt bad about it. And like I tried to change, but it was just, it was like, oh, once you're like in that trap, you're just in there. So it like took some work. And towards the end, I'm like, okay, I need to change this if it's online again in the fall. But like Ariel said, like I was still involved. I did earn and do normally as I go to Bible study. So we had that virtually, and that was so nice because you could just like decompress, and it wasn't anything about school or the pandemic. It was just like talking about a common like interest or whatever. So I really liked that, and being able to do that was like a breather.
That's good to know, Vincent. Kiana, you'll have to unmute yourself. What are your thoughts here? Do you feel like you've changed as a person at all under COVID-19?
Yeah, wait, first of all, am I sounding okay?
Yes, you sound good, yes.
Okay. I definitely do think I have changed under COVID-19. I mean, like, other than being a bit more irritable, I've definitely gained a lot of like more organizational skills. Before COVID-19, I was sort of an organized mess, I would say, for myself. And like, since it's happened, since having to have, make schedule and blocking in times for myself to be able to, complete my work. I think I've made that more of a habit and like brought that into my daily life. So
good to know. Good to know. We're hearing professors saying that this has been extremely informative. They're redesigning their classes for the fall based on this. So really cool to see that feedback. They're really, it's very helpful what you have to say. So thank you all for sharing. We have time for about one more question, and then we're going to get into how you can gain access to these notes, everything we've talked about today, and the study so that you can replicate it on your own with your own students if you'd like to do so. So all of this will be shared out. I'll go over that in a few minutes. The one last question that I think that we can go over here is, what is the one thing that you wish your professors would do or say to help you be successful this fall? So really think about that. What could they do or say to help you be successful? Who has a thought here?
I'll go.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned earlier, I do have a professor that, often sends us, little interesting like tidbits and articles, videos, whatever the case may be, but it is always within the vein of what we're doing. I think, our professors, keeping, I think like as long as our professors are able to, help and remind us of what we're here for, then that could definitely help, like in all cases, because sometimes you just need a little bit of a push, a little bit of, you can get through this to be able to finish out strong. So I feel like that's just one small thing that a professor could say or do to help in this case.
Good to know. Ariel or Vincent, do you have any thoughts there?
I was kind of thinking professors could just kind of let us know like the pressure isn't so much on like making sure everything's perfect. It's more so making sure you follow social guidelines, like you're distancing, you're just taking care of yourself, and then worrying about school is something I feel is important.
That's good to know. Yeah, we do know from the survey that overwhelmingly students are rating their health and their family and friends' health as number one. And then right after that, their education does come into that third position after the first two, flip-flopping back and forth between either themselves or their friends and family. So it's good to know that you all thinking that educators can communicate that to you as a priority and making sure they understand it is important. Vincent, do you have any other last thoughts here?
Yeah, kind of tying off of what Ariel said. I think definitely, I mean, they did more so than usual because of the pandemic, but like keeping up with that, or even just being like, to whatever extent you want to tell me if there's something like really stressful going on, because at least for me, I know like getting stuff off my chest just makes it so much easier to like breathe and then like refocus on like schoolwork. I mean, like Ariel said, it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you're doing the work or whatever. But I think just having that and being like, yes, like, how are you or how's your family? And then, to the extent of whatever the person wants to share, they can. But just that adds a nice benefit. And you just feel like, okay, I don't feel like the professor's just some stranger who's like teaching me, like in person or normally, like twice or three times a week or whatever. So I think just like keeping that and making like health and family the number one thing, but then like still learning and stuff like that, I think that would help just me feel better mentally, and then I would feel better to do work, if that makes sense.
Got it. It does make sense. Like if everyone's in alignment, that the priorities are the same, then you're actually freed up to spend more time on your education because you know that your educators know that you care about your health first and your family and friends' health first. And then after that, you're able to do your work. Priya had a nice compliment. Priya said, Vincent, you're a good storyteller. Maybe you could teach too. So I'll just cross that one off there because that's really nice. All right, awesome. We have come to the end of our question time. There are still opportunities for you to ask questions. You can email somewhere in the educator world, maybe Deeksha or Irina can put up an email of the email that you can send to if you have any questions or follow-up. But let's go through how you can gain access to the research that we have here. So the demographics and the access to data, I'm going to walk through this real quick. So our qualitative research demographics here, I'm going to pass this to Shireen just for a quick overview of what we did for qualitative research demographics.
Sure. So we interviewed 14 students from around the US. As we mentioned in the beginning, we balanced for gender, age, student status, as in are they full-time undergrad, part-time undergrad, graduate, etc., employment status, school, location in the US, major, and marital status.
Yeah, good to know. We also balanced all of those things in our quantitative research here too. We balanced for whether or not they were full-time in school, working part-time, and you'll see at the bottom here, these folks did not qualify. We also balanced for the main topic in school. We had an overrepresentation of people in the other category, so just the things that we hadn't listed here. But then after that, we had biology, nursing, computer science, and business, and so on. Then in terms of the year in college, you can see we have a pretty nice curve here. We have first years, second years, third, all the way through graduate school. And the folks who marked as high school were not eligible for this survey. And then going into the types of school that they go to, we see we have an overrepresentation in the four-year public institution category. The reason why it's so important, and I really hope that you do replicate this survey with your students, is because of this limitation of our survey and the SurveyMonkey panel. So if you do find different results because you go to a different type of institution, please do share with us. We'd like to know. In terms of the regions and territories, we have a good mix here. As you can see, we have Northeast, Midwest, South, and West, and a pretty good spread. And then in terms of ethnicity, we do have another challenge here and limitation to our study. We have an overrepresentation of folks who say that they are Caucasian. I'd love to make sure that other people can replicate this with a grouping that is a little bit more distributed. Age here, we purposefully overrepresented within the 8 to 29 age range because that was the folks that we were most interested in, but we wanted to make sure that we include learners who are in the 30 to 44-year-old category and above, which we do have. In terms of gender, there were limitations within the SurveyMonkey platform. We had to use a binary here, but as researchers, we would have preferred a more inclusive approach to gender, incorporating options across the gender and identity spectrum, and we have given the feedback to SurveyMonkey on this. In terms of household income, you can see we have a pretty good spread here, and preferring not to answer did not bar them from giving their answers to our survey. Now, how to access the study and methodology, you can access it on SurveyMonkey. We're going to be giving out these slides, so you can click on this link here and go to the survey and replicate the study yourself. We also are giving out the slides here in this way. So if you would like to use your camera, you can scan that QR code and you can gain access to it right on your phone right now. If you just hold up your phone like this, put it on camera and then click on it, it will bring that up on your phone and you can gain access to these slides. We want to thank you so much for spending time with us today. We are at the end of our time here, but thank you so much for speaking with us, giving your thoughts, a lot of great questions we did not unfortunately have time to answer today, but thank you so much for giving them. And I want to give a round of applause to our student panelists as well. I know that their cameras are off. I'm not going to make them turn back on, but Shireen, you and I, yay! Woo! Thank you so much to our student panelists. Thank you to Irina and Diksha for facilitating, and thank you to all of you for watching. Really awesome to do this today, and I appreciate you watching and participating. So thank you all.
Thank you all.
Yay, Diksha, you're muted.
Thank you, everyone. That was absolutely fantastic. Special shout out to the students for their really insightful perspectives. We have dropped the links and emails to the emails for additional questions. The link to this presentation and recording will be available after Summit. We will be uploading it to Coursera and you can access it there. So,
Diksha, I think the recording came in halfway through the panel. I do not think it was recording the whole time for the presentation, just as a heads up for folks. I noticed it was not recording and it came in like very late.
Okay, we will work through that.
Yep. In any case, you'll have access to the slides. So you can get the full slides and all of the speaker notes. You can present it yourself. That's completely fine. We'd actually like for you to do that and replicate this presentation.
Okay. We still have, I think we still have people leaving slowly. So,
questions here.
Yeah.
They're asking for the survey link.
Oh, I'll put that, I can share my screen and put that back up. Let's grab that. Okay, the survey link, here it is. You can access the slides and use them here. The survey link is within these slides, so you'll be able to access it. You can use either the QR code or you can take a picture of this and type that into your browser. The QR code is very easy though.
Mm.
Thank you all. I'm just going through these questions here, which are fantastic. A lot of them are asking about the access to the survey. This one here, I didn't get a chance to answer. Great, great. Okay, I put up the SurveyMonkey link. I'm still seeing those questions come in. So you can scan this with your phone for the QR code, or you can take a picture and type this into your URL. Thank you so much. Priya, you are awesome. Thank you so much. We would love to work with you too. Thanks for that compliment. Thanks, Sue. Thank you. Tanya, we are sharing this playback in the resources right now. So if you'd like to gain access to those, it is up here. Let's see. Must we leave? You don't need to leave, Priya. I'm just trying to keep this up so that if folks are here and they still need to gain access, I don't cut them off. But you're welcome to stay. All right, I think we have most people probably covered here. Leave it up for another minute or so. So just so you know, please do take a photo of this or scan your QR code. We still, I think, have 30 some folks on the call.
Can we get, if Vincent, Ariel, and Kiana are on the call, can we get a screenshot of the five of you?
Oh yeah, Vincent, Ariel, and Kiana, if you're still on there and you can hear this, if you would like to turn your camera back on, we'd like to take a screenshot to thank you and say, yay, we did it.
Can you stop screen sharing so we can?
Yeah, sure. Stop screen sharing. There we go.
Okay.
All right, Vincent, are you able to turn yours on? I'm not sure if you're still here, but we'd love to include you.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, perfect.
There you are. Okay, we'll smile. Yay.
Ready? Smile. Okay, we got it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
It has two blobs, one of Marina and one of me for the, but I think they're blue. Maybe we can do something with them. Yeah.
The student panelists, thank you, Kiana, Ariel, Vincent. You were all amazing. The comments and the, oh my gosh, the student panel is so good. It was just coming and coming. I was like, wow, they really love this. So I couldn't have imagined our presentation without you. And it was really, really great to have you to add a lot of color and thought about what's going on in your life to just like raw numbers that we're presenting, right? So thank you so much for doing that. I think I can let you go now. I'm not gonna hold you hostage. I know it's late for a lot of you on the East Coast, so.
Yeah. Great work, Shireen and Rachel. Both of you from designing the workshop to organizing and facilitating it. It was fantastic.
Before you finish it, let me just copy and paste the URL to people who are still asking.
Okay.
Yeah, there are people still.
Here. I'll share my screen for another few seconds here because if they need that.
Ian, did you have to head out to another session?
Yeah, I will go to.
You can. Rachel is the host and I'm the co-host, so we're fine.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to stay on just to share this, but student panelists, you can head out. I know it's late for you on the East Coast and such. So thank you so much. You all are amazing. I think Yesemin will be in touch with you on those next steps with everything that she talked about. But thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Stay safe during the pandemic. Okay. So once again, here are the slides and the QR code in case you still need that. Okay, I don't think we still have questions coming in about the QR code. Are you seeing that anywhere?
I sent the links to a couple people, so I think we are good.
All right, perfect. Thank you, everybody. I still think we still have people on the line, so I appreciate. Oh, SurveyMonkey link. Susan, the SurveyMonkey link is within the link slides. So if you go to the slides, which are currently shared here, you'll be able to click into the SurveyMonkey link from there. The slide right before the one that's currently being shown has that link.
And Susan, I did chat it to you after the presentation link as well.
Thanks, Susan. All right. Awesome. I think we got it. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. This was great. We're going to head offline now, but Shireen, great work. Air 5. Thanks, Deeksha. Thanks, Irina, for
Thank you.
doing all this. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.